Ulysses' Odyssey took place when the earth was actually upside down. This is according to ancient Greek texts. The North Pole was underneath in the south, where the South Pole is now. The South Pole is where the North Pole is now. Remember, we have texts saying that the sun was shining, rising from beyond the pillars of Gibraltar, setting from past Libya, from past Lebanon. So let's see what they wrote. According to a professor, he says, "Dear friends, I have to admit that lately I've been in a somewhat strange phase since I was trying to clarify an important detail, which I'll share with you, since now everything is clear. As we know, the Odysseus, that is Ulysses, moving with a raft from Ogygia to Scheria, had to have the Megalos Arctos, meaning the Large Dipper, the Great Dipper, in his left-hand side. Given this, we should complete the picture of Ulysses' journey by saying that the raft has no machine but a sail. This, as a statement, strange as it may seem, is important because everyone who reads the Odyssey takes it for granted and then forgets it, since it does not impress them. But why is it so crucial for us to remember this? Kindly support my Patreon account, since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. It's important that we remember this because it simply gives us the way Ulysses sat on the raft. I also asked a friend of mine, a sailboat captain, to explain to me where he'd be sitting on a position on a possible raft. The answer was relatively close to the steering wheel of the raft and on the opposite side from the side where the sail inflates, in a way, that is. Although in this image we see 2 people, but their position is not different from what one person would have. The wind blows from behind them and inflates its sail, and they, holding the ropes in the position of their body, that is, their weight, try to navigate their boat. Under no circumstances could they sit on the opposite side or from behind, because it's obvious. The sailors, quite coincidentally, have the following characteristic. Their left hand is towards the bow of the ship. In order for him to have, if we assume, that is Ulysses, if we assume he made a similar trip, the Big Dipper in his left-hand side, the Big Dipper should be in front of him also and should be directed towards him. This simple observation also shows how important this information was, since he could not see constellations that were on his back, but even if he had them again, they would not help him, since only the Big Dipper, the constellation he had on his bow, he could chart a sure course with. To complete the image of Ulysses, who on a raft in a similar way would try to lead it, being an experienced sailor, of course, we must find where the wind was blowing. Let us emphasize here that because sea currents and winds are interrelated events, we can claim, without making a mistake, that we can find the directions of the winds in a sea area if we know the movements of the currents. If we hypothetically go to the Ionian Sea, then we'll see that the movement of the currents is as follows. There's a stream near the shores that goes up to the Adriatic, and a stream in the rest of the Ionian that goes down to the Mediterranean. So whoever wanted to cross the Ionian in the direction from Italy to Greece, and of course by raft, should have his back to the north and move from west to east with in his bow constellations that are close to the celestial level equator, which means that in no case could they be sustainable. The only case would be for someone to start from the region of Sicily, so that there is a possibility to see some perpetual constellations. But in this case, we would have to find the non-existent island. But again, the following logical problem would arise. Why not go to Sicily or Lower Italy when they would logically be visible from this hypothetical island? Of course, Ulysses is on an island that has no trace of land near him, so he could not be in the Ionian Sea. But the expert should understand that. Another question mark is why he did not even see ships passing by him, since the Ionian was always buzzing with life and trade, ships going this way and that. We said experts. Let me just say that lately many people are giving lectures on the subjects of Homeric geography, unfortunately very far from my city. What nonsense is said is not described. Of course, always in the style of 1,000 cardinals. Everybody has his own opinion. But we continue with the raft theory, since we have said the rest before. The official version does not cover logic in any of its aspects. A traveler in the southern hemisphere, now traveling from right to left on a raft, would be in an inverted position from the one we described earlier in the Ionian Sea. He would have his back to the south and therefore front to the north. Left hand to the bow, of course. In a not very southern area, he could see at the appropriate time the Big Dipper in the bow. So, dear readers, in the first part we talked about why he could not see the Big Dipper traveling in the Ionian. Here we will see the time problem that exists in it. To be credible, I'll present it to you as always, data, and only data that each of you can find and judge. I start with the familiar map showing the transition of the equinoxes and the movement in time of the north magnetic poles. So here one easily observes that around 1200 BC, the following happens, even if we accept that there is a non-existent island somewhere in an area near or far from Sicily and from where one wants to go to Ithaca or Corfu of Greece, which is in the Ionian Sea. In 1200 BC, the North Magnetic Pole was located approximately from the delta of the Great Bear. So everyone who was moving from Italy to Greece, even at an angle, would have at most the bow of the Big Dipper, and of course you could not distinguish whether it belonged to the Big Dipper or another constellation, since he would have the north and therefore the Big Dipper on his back, and he would not see it. On the contrary, somewhere in the southern hemisphere, a few degrees south, or in the north, but with the exact opposite movement, would see the Big Dipper in his bow. In fact, this would be better understood if the date of the trip was closer to 2000 BC. So as you can see for yourself, no raft operator, unless he had an outboard engine or on board, could use the Big Dipper as a reference point for the Italy-Corfu trip, because he simply would not see it. This is from Pausanias and from Operiplos and from a Greek article I translated for you. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Now, the professor used this map. The constellation on the top right-hand side is Megaliarctos, meaning Big Dipper. On the upper left-hand side is Cassiopeia, and inside the circle, about 7 o'clock position from the Big Dipper, is the Little Dipper. And then you see on the 7 o'clock position, Kykenos, meaning the swan, and near the swan on to the right of it is Lyra and Iraklis and Bootes. And this is a map from what they believe was the constellation at 5000 BC or thereabouts. And of course, another major concern, that there were not any ships around him, even though the Mediterranean was full of ships trading, going, of course, between Lebanon, the Levant, Egypt, all the way to Italy, in France, Spain, Portugal, even to the British Isles. So these were there were ports of call all over the place in the Mediterranean. Ships would see each other. And for him not to have seen ships means that he was probably in an ocean that was not well known. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support.